My niece stole my inheritance. She looked me dead in the eye, called me too old to matter, and slammed the door of my house behind me. I walked away with one suitcase, 200 in cash, and a vow so sharp it could have cut glass. They thought I was the pawn, but honey, I was already halfway to queen. If you're watching this, subscribe, pour yourself some tea, and listen close. Because this isn't just a sad story about an old woman getting pushed aside, it's a war, and I play to win. It was a Tuesday at 10:14 a.m. The same Tuesday, I buried my husband, Robert. My hands still smelled like lilies from the funeral flowers when my niece, Victoria, oh yes, the golden child of the family, showed up with a folder of papers and crocodile tears. "Auntie, I'll take care of everything," she cooed, wearing black silk like a vulture in Prada heels. "All you need to do is sign here. I'll handle the estate. You don't need the stress." Stress. That's what she called my home, my security, my life's work with Robert. I hesitated, pen shaking between my fingers. "This isn't what your uncle wanted." She smiled, shark teeth hidden behind lip gloss. "Of course it, Island. You're too old to handle it now. Don't worry, family takes care of family." Family. No, that's DNA. By noon, the house keys were gone from my purse. By 6 p.m., she had contractors measuring the drapes. And by midnight, I was standing outside a motel off Route 17, listening to the hum of neon lights and the drip-drip of a busted air conditioner, while my niece toasted her new beginnings in my dining room. That night, I sat on a sagging motel mattress, staring at the floral wallpaper that smelled faintly of mildew. I thought of Robert's hands, calloused from years of work, folding our savings into careful plans. I thought of the promises we made, never to let the family fortune be wasted, never to let outsiders sink their claws into it. And then I thought of Victoria's words, spat like venom, "You're too old to matter." Let me tell you something, honey. Age is not weakness, it's armor. Every wrinkle is a scar I survived. Every gray hair is a warning label. Don't underestimate me. I poured myself the motel's watery coffee and whispered into the dark, "Pawn to queen." The next morning, I bought a newspaper with my last loose change. There it was. Local heiress Victoria Whitmore hosts charity gala. My name wasn't mentioned once, not a widow, not a partner, just erased, like Robert and I had never built a damn thing. My blood boiled hotter than the motel radiator. So, I took out the one thing they didn't know I still had, Robert's leather notebook. Inside were scribbles, codes, and a name circled 3 times in red ink, Daniels, our lawyer. Our real lawyer. At 3:45 p.m., I called his office. The secretary hesitated, then whispered, "Come tomorrow morning," quietly. Quietly? Honey, I hadn't been quiet a day in my life. But I nodded anyway, because this wasn't just survival, this was setup. That night, as I lay on the stiff motel sheets, I made a promise to myself. I would not die a victim in a roadside motel. I would not let my niece rewrite my story. And I sure as hell would not let Robert's legacy rot in her greedy hands. She thought she'd kicked me out. She thought she'd silenced me. She thought age meant weakness. But if she had paid attention, if she had truly known me, she'd have realized something. The pawn was already planning her next move. And when the queen takes the board, honey, it's checkmate. They say funerals bring out the best in family. Lies. Funerals bring out the vultures. Robert had been in the ground less than a week when Victoria strutted into my kitchen, heels clacking against tile, dripping fake sympathy like cheap perfume. "Auntie, I just want what's best for you," she purred, sliding a folder onto the counter. "This house is too much. The bills, the upkeep, you shouldn't have to worry about any of it. Kevin and I can take care of it." Take care. That's what mobsters say before they make someone disappear. I opened the folder. Legalese and jargon blurred together, but one phrase stood out in bold. Transfer of ownership. I looked up. "You're asking me to sign away my house?" Her smile didn't crack. "No, Auntie, I'm asking you to trust me. You can still live here, of course, but officially it'll be in my name. Easier for taxes, easier for management. Easier, all right, easier for her to sell it from under me." I pushed the papers back. "Your uncle and I built this home together. He wouldn't want it handed off like a toy." That's when the mask slipped. Her eyes hardened. Her tone dropped. "Uncle Robert is gone. Times change. You're old. You don't need a house this big. What you need is security. And frankly, She leaned closer, her breath sharp with Chardonnay. You should be grateful anyone still cares. Grateful. The word hit like a slap. I straightened. Is that what you call this? Caring? She smirked. You're just the wife. Just the aunt. You don't even matter anymore. Everyone knows it. There it was. The truth, stripped bare. By 4:12 p.m., the girl I had once cradled as a baby, sung lullabies to, and paid for braces, was gone. In her place stood a vulture in designer silk, circling her prey. That evening, I overheard her in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, Kevin, it's done. She's too senile to fight. We'll have the house listed by next quarter. Imagine the profit once we renovate. Marble counters, new roof, it'll triple in value. She won't know the difference. Senile. Imagine that. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her reflection in the glass. She laughed, a sharp, greedy sound. The same laugh she had as a child when she stole cookies from the jar. Except now, the cookies were my life's work. The next morning, she marched into my bedroom uninvited, snapping her fingers. Pack your things. Kevin and I agreed it's better if you stay somewhere smaller, a retirement community. Think of it as cozy. Cozy, I repeated, my jaw tight. And what happens to this place? She rolled her eyes. We'll modernize it, flip it. Honestly, Auntie, you wouldn't understand. Real estate is business. You're not built for it. Not built for it. Honey, I'd survived wars, recessions, and Robert's snoring. I was built for survival. Still, I said nothing. I let her believe she'd won. Sometimes, silence is the sharpest blade. By the weekend, she'd moved my clothes into 2 suitcases, stacked by the door like I was a guest. She handed me $200 in cash, pity money, and said the words that burned hotter than fire. Don't take this the wrong way, but you're too old to matter in decisions like this. Let the next generation handle it. Too old to matter. That phrase would echo in my head for days, not as an insult, but as fuel. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply walked out, heels clicking against the driveway like a countdown clock. Because here's the thing Victoria never understood. When you strip someone down to nothing, you don't make them weaker, you make them dangerous. At 9:30 p.m. that night, I checked into a roadside motel. The clerk barely looked up as he slid me a key to room 12. $50 cash, no questions. No questions, indeed. Inside, the wallpaper peeled, the mattress sagged, and the air conditioner rattled like an old man coughing. But I sat on that bed and I smiled. Because while Victoria thought she'd exiled me, she had actually freed me. No more illusions, no more masks. The game was on. I whispered to myself, watch me. By Sunday morning, she was hosting brunch in my dining room, laughing with her friends about downsizing the old lady. Photos went up on Facebook, her in pearls, champagne glass raised, captioned, New beginnings. Let them toast, let them gloat. Because, honey, beginnings are only as strong as their endings. And Victoria's ending would be written by me. She thought she'd unmasked me as weak, as disposable. But all she'd done was rip her own mask off. The doting niece was gone. The predator stood exposed. Family? No. That's DNA. You want to know what rock bottom feels like? Try counting the stains on a motel ceiling while your niece eats steak dinners in the house you built. The room smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. The carpet was sticky, the kind that clung to your shoes like guilt. The bedspread had a pattern of faded roses, each petal a reminder that even beauty rots if left in the wrong hands. $50 a night. Affordable, the clerk said, as if affordability were dignity. I dropped my 2 suitcases on the bed. Everything I had left in the world could be zipped shut in under 10 seconds. Robert's photo, 3 dresses, a stack of unpaid bills, $200 in cash. My life's work, distilled down to a pity bag. I sat, staring at the yellowed wallpaper, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not because I was weak, but because the insult had been so sharp, so deliberate, it demanded tears to wash it clean. You're too old to matter. The words rang in my ears like church bells, mocking, relentless. The first night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:37 a.m., I walked to the vending machine in the lobby, quarters clinking in my palm. The machine spat out a bag of pretzels so stale they cracked like glass. I chewed anyway. Hunger doesn't care about pride. As I walked back, I saw myself in the cracked mirror by the ice machine. Wrinkled face, tired eyes, shoulders slumped. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Was this the woman Robert had loved? Was this the aunt who once baked cookies for Victoria, who stayed up all night sewing her prom dress when the store one didn't fit? I pressed my palm flat to the glass. "No," I whispered. "This isn't the ending." The pawn was still on the board. By the third day, the motel staff knew me as the old lady in 12. A cleaner knocked gently, pity in her eyes, leaving fresh towels that smelled faintly of bleach. I thanked her, smiling like it didn't matter. But inside, rage boiled. Why was I suddenly the charity case? At 11:15 a.m., I watched from the window as a young couple checked in, laughing, dragging a suitcase with stickers from Paris and Rome. I wondered if they had any idea how quickly a suitcase can stop being a choice and start being a sentence. I clutched Robert's leather notebook, flipping through his scribbles, trying to decipher the mess: numbers, names, addresses, and then that one word circled 3 times: Daniels. That evening, I walked to a diner next door, sliding into a booth sticky with syrup. The waitress poured coffee into a chipped mug, no questions asked. "Rough night?" she asked. I smirked. "Rough life." She didn't laugh, but she left the coffee pot on my table. "Sometimes, honey, that's all the kindness you need." I pulled out Robert's notebook and began to trace the lines, piecing together the puzzle. Estate planning, wills, conditions, hidden truths. Victoria thought she had outplayed me, but she didn't know I still had cards left to flip. On the 5th day, I walked into the motel office and asked to use their fax machine. The clerk looked at me like I'd crawled out of the 80 seconds. "Nobody faxes anymore," he said. "Then it'll be fast," I shot back. I faxed Daniels's office. 1 page, 6 words. "I need to see you. Urgent." By 4 p.m., his secretary called my cell. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Be discreet." Discreet. If only they knew. That night, I sat on the bed with the TV humming in the background. Victoria's face flashed on the screen, local news covering her charity fundraiser. She wore pearls, laughing for the cameras, standing in front of a banner with her name spelled bold. I threw my pretzel bag at the screen. "Charity begins at home, honey. Too bad you kicked it out." The irony was so bitter it was almost comical. I won't lie. Those 2 weeks in that motel nearly broke me. Every cockroach skittering across the bathroom tile, every coin I stretched for another stale sandwich, every sigh I heard from the clerk when I handed him wrinkled bills, it all pressed against me like a reminder. You are nothing. But here's the trick. When the world insists you're nothing, you start to believe you can be anything. I wasn't broken. I was sharpened. On the 10th night, I wrote a list in Robert's notebook. A war plan. Daniels, the lawyer, the key, the will, the truth, the weapon. Freeze. Every asset. Watch them beg. At the bottom, I scrawled 2 words. Operation Justice. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and lay down on the creaking mattress. The motel ceiling still sagged, the air conditioner still rattled, but the tears didn't come anymore. Because tomorrow, I was done being the pawn. And when the queen moves, the whole board shifts. $50 motels may crush your pride, but they also light fires no mansion can contain. Victoria thought she'd left me broken, but what she'd really done was give me the time to sharpen my claws. Affordable. You want to know the difference between despair and clarity? It's about 20 minutes on a city bus that smells like wet coats and regret. At 8:42 a.m., I climbed onto the number 12 heading downtown, clutching Robert's worn leather notebook like it was the Ark of the Covenant. My knees ached, my pride ached worse, but I sat there with $2.50 of exact change burning in my pocket. Across the aisle, a teenager scrolled her phone, chewing gum loud enough to make saints swear. Me? I was rehearsing one line. "Mr. Daniels, I need the truth." By 9:03, I stood in front of Daniels and Associates. The glass doors gleamed, etched with his name in gold lettering. Funny how betrayal looks shinier when it's wrapped in mahogany and brass. The receptionist glanced up, her voice dipped in fake sugar. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes, 9 o'clock. Margaret Sullivan." Her brows flicked upward. "Oh, Mrs. Sullivan. Mr. Daniels has been expecting you." Expecting me. Interesting. When I walked into his office, Daniels rose from behind his desk. 70 if he was a day, silver hair combed with military precision, wire-rimmed glasses catching the morning light. "Margaret," he said warmly. "I wondered when you'd come." I stiffened. "You knew I was supposed to?" His expression faltered. "Of course. You should have been present at the reading of Robert's will 2 weeks ago. Victoria assured me you were traveling. That liar had shipped me to a $50 motel and told the lawyer I was sipping my Thais in the Bahamas. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. "Mr. Daniels, I was not traveling. I was evicted." Daniels's face drained of color. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the desk. "Margaret, sit. We need to clear this up." I sat, the leather chair sighing beneath me. Daniels adjusted his glasses, flipping through the will. His voice was steady, but the words hit me like hammer blows. "I, Robert James Sullivan, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath." I leaned forward, breath caught. "To my beloved wife, Margaret Ann Sullivan, our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and effects. Additionally, 70% of all financial assets, accounts, and investments, totaling approximately $18 million. I gripped the armrests. $18 million? Daniels nodded gravely. "Correct. The balance, $10 million, was designated for your niece, Victoria Hayes. However, those funds are placed in trust, contingent upon one very specific condition." He read slower now, each word deliberate. "Contingent upon her treatment of her aunt following my death." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Her treatment of me?" "Yes," Daniels said. Robert was adamant. He feared Victoria's entitlement. He instructed that any mistreatment, any act of disrespect or cruelty toward you, would void her inheritance entirely. The $10 million would revert to you. I sat there, stunned. Robert stubborn. Traditional Robert had seen the storm coming. He'd placed me at the center of the board, and Victoria hadn't even noticed. The irony was so perfect it was almost poetic. Victoria had kicked me out to secure her claim, not realizing she'd kicked herself right into ruin. I looked Daniels straight in the eye. "She told me I had nothing. She gave me $200 in cash and told me to find somewhere else to die." Daniels slammed the folder shut, his face flushed with anger. "Then she has violated the condition in the clearest terms possible. Margaret, she has not only lost her inheritance, she has committed fraud by concealing this document." Fraud. A sweet, heavy word, rolling across the room like thunder. By 10:12, the office was buzzing. Daniels called in his assistant, ordered certified copies of the will prepared, and dictated instructions like a general before battle. "We'll freeze the accounts immediately. Every bank, every investment house. Victoria will find her credit cards declined by sundown." I sipped the lukewarm water from the crystal glass he'd handed me, feeling the ice melt on my tongue. "And the house?" "Yours, completely. We'll file paperwork with the county today to secure title in your name." I sat back, letting the weight of it sink in. From motel cockroaches to marble conference tables, all in less than a week. At 11 sharp, Daniels leaned forward. "Margaret, do you want to press charges?" I hesitated. My heart said yes. My conscience whispered maybe. My rage answered for me. "She forged papers. She lied to you. She evicted me. Press them all." Daniels smiled thinly. "Good. Then let's begin what I like to call Operation Justice." The phrase lit something inside me. Operation Justice. It sounded almost cinematic. By noon, the wheels were already turning. Daniels was on the phone with the district attorney, then with Detective Harris at Financial Crimes. I watched as he outlined Victoria's actions. Concealment, fraud, elder abuse. Every sentence was a nail in her coffin. I thought back to the motel clerk handing me change like I was a beggar, to Victoria's pearls flashing on the TV while I ate stale pretzels, to that one line echoing in my head, "You're too old to matter." Too old to matter? Honey, I was about to matter to every cop, lawyer, and judge in this county. At 12:15, Daniels' assistant placed a fresh stack of documents before me. "Sign here, Mrs. Sullivan. And here. Initial there." I signed, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. With each stroke of the pen, I took back ground. Victoria thought she'd stolen. The house, the accounts, the legacy. By the time I put down the pen, my life wasn't just restored. It was transformed. Walking out of Daniels's office at 1:02 p.m., the sun was warm on my face. The city noises felt sharper, brighter. People brushed past me on the sidewalk, but I didn't feel small anymore. I felt tall. I felt dangerous. Because, honey, I wasn't the pawn anymore. I was holding all the cards. Victoria thought she'd inherited a fortune by throwing me to the curb. Instead, she'd triggered the very clause that handed me everything. The irony wasn't just poetic, it was justice. You ever watch a thief realize the vault door is locked from the inside? That's what this chapter is about. At 7:30 a.m., sharp, Daniels's office called me back. Mrs. Sullivan, it's done. Every account in Victoria Hayes's name has been frozen, effective immediately. I pictured her at some boutique checkout, swiping her black Amex, hearing the dreaded words. Declined. Oh, honey, that's better than champagne. By 9, I was sitting in Daniels's oak-paneled conference room again, the smell of strong coffee in the air. His assistant brought me a folder thicker than a family Bible. Inside, notices to banks, freeze orders stamped red, and a police report already filed. Margaret, Daniels said, sliding the folder across. Every cent is locked. She can't move, withdraw, or hide a dime. The estate is back under your control. I traced my fingers over the heavy paper. So, what happens now? He leaned back. Now, we wait for her to panic. And when she calls, and she will, you answer. At 10:22 a.m., the phone rang. Unknown number. My heart thudded, but I picked up. Hello? A pause. Then Victoria's voice, dripping venom, disguised as silk. Aunt Margaret, what have you done? I smiled into the receiver. Good morning to you too, dear. Having trouble at the bank? Her tone snapped. Don't play games with me. My cards aren't working. My accounts are frozen. You've ruined everything. I let the silence hang just long enough for her to sweat. Then, no, darling, you ruined it yourself when you threw me out. She gasped, like I'd slapped her. You don't understand, Auntie. I had to. Uncle Robert wanted me to carry on the legacy. I cut her off. Funny. I was sitting in Daniel's office yesterday, listening to Robert's real will. The one you hid. The one that said every penny depended on how you treated me. Silence. Then a choked whisper. That's not true. Oh, it's very true. And you proved Robert right. You treated me like garbage. You called me too old to matter. You lied to his lawyer. Congratulations, Victoria. You just forfeited $10 million. The line went dead quiet. I imagined her face pale, pearls trembling against her neck. Finally, she hissed, You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll drag you through court. I leaned back in the chair, savoring every word. Go ahead, but let me warn you, honey. I'm holding all the cards. The house, the accounts, the will, and now the law. You think you're dangerous? Watch me. By 11:05, Daniels had looped in Detective Harris, who promised subpoenas by the afternoon. This is elder financial abuse, Harris said flatly over speakerphone. Classic case, we'll move fast. And if she forged signatures, she'll be facing felony charges. Daniels smirked. Fraud, concealment, and elder abuse. That's a trifecta. I sipped my coffee. I prefer to call it karma. At 1:47 p.m., the first confirmation rolled in. Wells Fargo had complied. By 2:10, Citibank. By 2:32, Merrill Lynch. Each email ping was music. Each freeze another nail sealing Victoria's gilded coffin. I asked Daniels, how long before she feels the full weight? He checked his watch. By dinner time. And if she's smart, she'll call again, this time begging. And she did. At 6:45 p.m., the motel phone rang. Same unknown number. This time her voice was trembling. Aunt Margaret, please, we can work this out. I was under so much pressure. You know how hard things have been since Uncle Robert died. I almost laughed. Pressure? Honey, you were sipping champagne on my couch while I ate stale pretzels in a $50 motel. She tried again. We're family. Surely we can settle this privately. I'll give you half. Keep the house. I'll take the rest. The audacity almost choked me. Family? No, that's DNA. And the only thing you're taking is a lesson in consequences. Her mask slipped completely then. She spat. You'll regret this, old woman. You think you've won, but I'll destroy you. Do you hear me? I'll destroy you. I let her rage echo, then lowered my voice until it was ice. Victoria, watch me. And I hung up. By 8 p.m., Daniels called again, chuckling. She's scrambling. Already tried to withdraw cash at 3 banks. All denied. We've got her cornered, Margaret. The DA is preparing charges. This is moving faster than I anticipated. I looked out the motel window at the neon glow, the same light that had made me feel so small just days ago. But now, it felt like a stage light shining on my comeback. Because, honey, this wasn't just about money. It was about respect. About reclaiming every ounce of dignity she tried to strip from me. I poured myself the last of the motel's terrible coffee, lifted the chipped mug, and whispered into the night. Checkmate. Victoria thought freezing me out of my own home would make her queen of the board. Instead, I froze every one of her accounts. The pawn wasn't just moving, I was toppling kings. You ever see a peacock dragged through mud? That's what my niece looked like the night the police took her away. At 7:18 p.m., I was sitting in Daniels's office again, sipping something far better than motel coffee, when Detective Harris walked in with a file under his arm. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Mrs. Sullivan, we've secured a warrant. Elder abuse, fraud, forgery. Tonight she goes down. For a moment, my breath caught. Not because I pitied her, but because Robert's voice echoed in my head. Protect the legacy. Don't let greed rot it away. I nodded once. Do it. At 8:06 p.m., Victoria swept into Le Jardin, the fanciest restaurant in town, pearls glittering under chandelier light. She ordered wine so expensive the waiter handled the bottle like it was nitroglycerin. Too bad she wouldn't get to finish the glass. Because at 8:13, Harris and his team walked through the door. Crisp uniforms, badges gleaming. Diners froze mid-bite. The clink of silverware died. Victoria Hayes, Harris said, voice steady. You're under arrest for financial fraud, elder abuse, and willful concealment of legal documents. The color drained from her face faster than the wine into her glass. This is a mistake, she stammered. My aunt, she's confused. Old, she doesn't know what she's saying. Every eye in the room turned toward me, sitting quietly in the corner, watching the play unfold like opening night at the theater. I stood slowly, cane in hand, though I didn't need it. Confused? No, dear. I've never been clearer. The handcuffs clicked shut at 8:16. The pearls didn't glitter so brightly then. Diners whispered behind their menus. Someone snapped a photo. The queen had fallen, and everyone wanted proof. As Harris led her past my table, she twisted, eyes blazing. You did this. You'll regret it. I leaned back, calm as a summer breeze. Bon appétit. By 10 p.m., she was sitting in an interrogation room, nails tapping furiously on the table. Harris leaned in. Victoria, here's the situation. The evidence is stacked against you. Forged signatures, hidden documents, recorded eviction threats. Unless you want to spend the next 10 years in a jumpsuit, I suggest you cooperate. That's when the bargaining began. At 10:42 p.m., Daniels called me to listen in on speaker. Her voice came through, brittle but desperate. Fine, I'll make a deal. Aunt Margaret can keep the house. She can even have half the money. Just, don't press charges. I'll sign whatever you want. I let out a laugh sharp enough to cut glass. Half? Honey, you've already lost it all. You're not negotiating from strength, you're drowning. She snapped back, venom returning. Then I'll drag this through the press. I'll tell them you manipulated Uncle Robert, that you brainwashed him into cutting me out. People will believe me, they always do. I didn't flinch. Operation Justice isn't about public opinion, sweetheart. It's about the law. And the law doesn't care about your sob stories. At 11:15, Harris upped the ante. Victoria, if you cooperate, maybe we'll consider leniency. But if you keep threatening your aunt, I'll personally make sure the DA pursues the maximum sentence. I could almost hear her pearls rattling in that holding cell. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" I answered cold and clear. Accountability, an apology, and your silence, forever. But she couldn't help herself. At 11:30, she made one last pathetic offer. I'll pay you off. Cash. I still have offshore accounts. Just let me go. Harris slammed the table. That's another felony, Miss Hayes. Attempted bribery. Keep digging, why don't you? I smiled, savoring every crack in her voice. Affordable. Midnight struck. Harris returned to Daniels's office where I waited, bringing fresh updates. She's rattled. She'll spend the night in county, Tomorrow the DA will formalize charges, but we've got her exactly where we want her. I raised my glass red wine this time, not motel water, and toasted quietly. To justice. Lying in bed that night, I replayed the scene in the restaurant. The way the pearls slid against her throat as the cuffs clicked. The way the diner's eyes darted, hungry for scandal. The way she tried to look powerful even as the foundation crumbled under her feet. It wasn't pity I felt. It was clarity. Because sometimes, honey, the only way to teach a vulture not to feast is to clip its wings. She thought she could buy me off. She thought she could smear me. But the moment those cuffs snapped shut, the game changed. She thought it was checkmate. But she forgot I'm the queen now. You think the war is over when the enemy's in cuffs. But sometimes, honey, that's when the real war begins. At 9:07 the next morning, Daniels called me into his office. His voice, usually calm as granite, had a crack in it. "Margaret, we've uncovered something." That something turned out to be a thick, unmarked folder Harris had delivered from federal archives. It bore Robert's name. My Robert. I sat down hard in the leather chair, clutching my purse like a life raft. Daniels slid the folder across the desk. "This surfaced during Victoria's interrogation. She claims your late husband was involved in questionable financial activities." My throat went dry. "Lies. She's desperate." Daniels sighed, tapping the folder. "It's not all lies. There are records here, large wire transfers, shell companies, some dating back 20 years. 20 years! My heart thudded. That was the year Robert started those late nights at the office, the business trips that never made sense. At 9:30, Harris joined us on speaker. His tone was firm, clipped. "Mrs. Sullivan, I don't want to alarm you, but Victoria is trying to use these records as leverage. She's telling the DA that unless charges are dropped, she'll expose Robert's past dealings, money laundering, offshore accounts, possibly tax evasion." The room tilted. Money laundering? My Robert? The man who refused to buy generic cereal because he said it tasted dishonest? I whispered. "There must be a mistake." Harris paused. "Maybe. Maybe not. But even if these records are incomplete, they could damage your standing in probate court. The estate could be tied up for years." By 10:12, the panic had set in. What if Victoria's last weapon wasn't her greed, but Robert's ghosts? I looked Daniels dead in the eye. "Tell me the truth. Can she take everything from me?" He hesitated. "If this goes public, it could jeopardize the estate. The government could freeze your accounts, pending investigation." Freeze. The word cut like ice. I'd spent weeks freezing her out, only to learn I might be frozen too. At 11:45, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against every ounce of judgment, I answered. It was Victoria. Her voice was hoarse, but sly. "Enjoying your little victory, Auntie? Well, guess what? I have Robert's secrets in my hands now. The feds would love to hear about his shell companies. Want to keep your millions? Drop the charges." I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "You're bluffing." She laughed, low and ugly. "Am I? He wasn't as perfect as you thought. And if I go down, I'll make sure you go with me. You'll lose it all." The silence stretched. I thought of Robert's notebook, his scribbles, that one word circled in red. Daniels. Had he known? Had he hidden something even from me? I forced steel into my voice. "You think you're clever, Victoria. But blackmail isn't leverage. It's desperation. And desperation always slips." She purred. "We'll see. You have 24 hours. Drop the charges or I'll tell the whole world your perfect husband was a crook." Click. At 12:20, I sat in the park across from Daniels's office, staring at children playing, their laughter slicing through the fog in my head. Could Robert really have done this? Could my marriage, my foundation, have been built on secrets? And if so, what did that make me? Victim, partner, or fool? I whispered into the wind. Family or DNA? Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's smoke. At 3:05, Daniels returned from court, face pale. "The DA is hesitating. Victoria's claims have stirred the pot. If we don't counter this, Margaret, your inheritance could be tied up indefinitely. Worse if the feds investigate and find merit. You could lose everything. Lose everything. Again." The motel walls flashed in my mind, the mildew smell, the $50 humiliation. No. Never again. That night at 7:40, I sat in my kitchen, reclaimed but shadowed, pouring whiskey into Robert's old glass. The amber liquid glowed like fire. I stared at the photo of him on the mantel. Tell me the truth, Robert. Were you a liar too? The photo, of course, stayed silent, but inside, a cold resolve took root. If Victoria wanted to play dirty, then so be it. She wasn't the only one who knew how to dig. At 11:11 p.m., I called Harris directly. If she thinks Robert's secrets will bury me, she's wrong. I want her wiretapped, recorded. Every word out of her mouth caught on tape. She wants a war? Let's give her one. There was a pause. Then Harris replied, "That's risky, but if you're willing, we can make it happen." I exhaled, steady. Do it. Because tomorrow, the pawn isn't just moving. The queen is setting the trap. Victoria thought she found my weak spot, Robert's shadow. But shadows only exist because of light, and I was done living in the dark. She thought blackmail would break me, but she forgot I've already been broken once, and I survived. You ever bait a trap with rotten meat and watch the rat come running? That's exactly what we did to Victoria. At 8 a.m., Detective Harris slid a small black device across Daniels's desk. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is a wire. Clip it under your collar. We'll record everything. If she tries to blackmail you, we'll have her." I picked it up, the weight barely an ounce, but it felt like carrying a grenade. So I walk into the lion's den, smile, and wait for her to bite? Harris smirked. "Exactly. Just keep her talking." I tucked the wire beneath my blouse. Honey, I'd been keeping people talking for 65 years. At 9:32 a.m., I called Victoria from Daniels's office. My voice calm, even sweet. "Darling, perhaps we should meet. Privately. I've been thinking about what you said, about Robert. Maybe we can work something out." She bit instantly. "Finally. You're seeing reason. Noon. The old Whitmore Hotel, Suite 407. Don't be late." Suite 407. The same hotel where Robert once took me for our anniversary. Irony so sharp it was almost funny. By 11:58, I stood outside the hotel door, heart thundering. Harris and his team were in the van across the street, Daniels on standby. I adjusted the wire, knocked twice, and entered. Victoria sat at the table, papers spread like a poker hand. Her pearls were gone. Instead, she wore a sleek blazer, eyes glinting like a cornered fox. "You came," she purred. "Good, because you have a choice to make." At 12:05, the game began. She slid a folder toward me. Inside, photocopies of bank transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. Robert's handwriting scrawled across margins. "See," she whispered. "Your precious husband wasn't the saint you thought. Money laundering, fraud. If this gets out, your millions vanish, unless you drop the charges." I leaned forward, pretending to study the pages, though my pulse raced. "And if I don't?" Her smile widened. "Then tomorrow morning, I deliver this to the press. You'll lose everything. House, money, reputation. You'll be the old fool who lived off dirty cash." The wire buzzed faintly. Harris's voice in my earpiece. "Good, keep her talking. Get her to admit intent." So I pushed harder. "So you're saying you'll blackmail me? That unless I give you money, you'll expose Robert?" She chuckled, low and cruel. "Call it leverage, call it survival. Either way, you know I hold the winning hand." I let the silence stretch, then whispered, "Funny. That's what pawns always think right before the queen takes the board." At 12:20, the door burst open. Harris stormed in, agents behind him, badges flashing. "Victoria Hayes, you're under arrest for blackmail, attempted extortion, and obstruction of justice." Her face crumbled, horror dawning, as she realized the wire glowing faintly under my collar. "No." She set me up. "This is entrapment." Harris's voice was ice. "No, Miss Hayes, this is accountability." The agents cuffed her hands behind her back, papers scattering to the floor like confetti at the world's ugliest party. But the real twist came at 12:27. Another man entered, tall, gray suit, badge flashed. "Special Agent Moore, FBI." He nodded at Harris, then turned to me. "Mrs. Sullivan, there's something you should know. Your late husband Robert wasn't a criminal. He was an informant. These shell companies? They were covers for a sting operation. He worked with us for nearly 15 years. The room spun. "Informant? Robert?" Moore smiled faintly. "Yes, that's why some of these records look suspicious. He was feeding us intel. Thanks to him, we dismantled 3 laundering rings. Your husband was a hero, Mrs. Sullivan, and his estate is clean. The irony was so perfect it was almost poetic. Victoria shrieked as they dragged her out. She knew. She planned this. I should have gotten everything. I stood tall, voice clear as glass. Family? No, darling. That's DNA. And you just proved it. At 1:15 p.m., Harris escorted me outside. Sunlight bathed the street, brighter than I'd ever seen it. My knees still shook, but my spine was steel. The trap had snapped shut. Not on me, on her. That evening, at 7 p.m., I sat in my reclaimed dining room with Daniels and Harris, pouring glasses of red wine. We toasted Robert, not the man with shadows, but the man with secrets that saved lives. Operation Justice, Daniels declared, lifting his glass. I smiled, sipping deep. Checkmate. Victoria thought Robert's ghosts would be her weapon. Instead, they became her coffin. She called it leverage. The FBI called it evidence. And me? I just called it victory. You ever walk back into a house that was stolen from you, only to realize it feels more yours than ever? That's triumph, honey. At 9 a.m. sharp, 2 weeks after Robert's funeral, the county clerk delivered the final paperwork. Title transfer, deed stamped. Bank accounts unfrozen with my name alone printed bold at the top. I stood in the foyer of 847 Oakwood Drive, sunlight slanting through the windows. The same floors Victoria once stomped across in her Prada heels now gleamed under my slippers. And this time, every inch of it, the bricks, the beams, the bloodline was mine. By noon, contractors were hauling in fresh paint and new furniture. Out went the gaudy chandelier Victoria had hung in her redecoration phase. In came bookshelves, Robert's old desk, and a piano I'd wanted for decades but never allowed myself to buy. Any particular theme, Mrs. Sullivan? The decorator asked. Yes, I said, smiling. Dignity. Because revenge tastes sweet, but dignity? That lingers. At 3:15 p.m., Daniels arrived with the final court order. Victoria's inheritance revoked. Her trust dissolved. Every cent reverted to me. He laid the paper flat on the polished table. It's over. Legally, morally, financially. You've won. I leaned over, scrawled my signature, and whispered the only words that mattered. Checkmate. But victory wasn't just about crushing her. It was about building something better from the ashes. That evening, at 7 p.m., I hosted a small gathering. Neighbors, old friends, even the motel clerk who once handed me change with pity in his eyes. I raised a glass. I've decided to establish the Sullivan Foundation, I announced. For women over 60, evicted, abandoned, or overlooked. We'll provide legal aid, housing, and, most importantly, dignity. Because being too old to matter is the cruelest lie society ever told. The room erupted in applause. Tears shone in eyes around the table. For the first time in weeks, the heaviness in my chest lifted. At 8:42 p.m., I sat alone on the porch with a glass of wine. The night was quiet, cicadas humming. I thought of Robert, of his secret life as an informant, his quiet battles I never saw. I wondered if he'd be proud of me if somewhere he was raising a glass, too. Family or DNA? I asked the stars. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's choice. And my choice was clear. The next morning, at 10 a.m., Harris called. Victoria pled guilty. Blackmail, fraud, elder abuse. She'll serve time, probably years. I thanked him, then added, make sure she pays restitution, not to me, to the foundation. He chuckled. Savage. I like it. Savage. Maybe. But justice sometimes wears sharp heels. At 2 p.m., I walked through the local community center, already planning offices for the foundation. A woman in her 70s stopped me. I saw the news, she whispered. What you did to her, you gave me hope. My own son tried to steal my pension. Maybe I can fight back too. I clasped her hand tight. You can, and you will. Watch me. By 5:30, the first donations had already rolled in. Not from pity, but from respect. Women calling, writing, saying they wanted to stand beside me. To fight for themselves, their dignity, their place at the table. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just my revenge, it was a movement. That night, back in my living room, I poured a glass of scotch, sat in Robert's old chair, stared at the framed will Daniels had given me, hanging proudly on the wall. I smiled. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything they swore you'd never be. I raised the glass high. To pawns that become queens. She thought she'd erased me. She thought I was too old to matter. Instead, I rewrote the ending. Now, honey, it's not just my story. It's our story. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me your story, because every pawn deserves a chance to become queen.